Israel bombs Gaza's only Catholic church, the latest religious site hit in the war. Hundreds of mosques damaged or destroyed, with cemeteries obliterated too. In the occupied West Bank, attacks on Christians and Muslims are increasing. Why is all this happening? This is Inside Story. Hi there, I'm James Bays. Gaza's only Catholic church bombed, the latest religious site targeted by Israel in its relentless assault on Palestinians. The church came to global attention with daily phone calls Pope Francis made to the parish priest who was injured in the attack. Earlier this year, Gaza's authorities reported almost 1,000 mosques had either been damaged or completely destroyed. Even the dead have been targets. Israeli forces have desecrated at least 16 cemeteries in Gaza, bulldozers obliterating the graves and final resting place of generations of Palestinians. Meanwhile, in the occupied West Bank, settlers are intensifying their attacks on Christians and Muslims alike. So why are religious sites under attack? Is it part of a deliberate strategy? Well, let's explore all of this with our guests shortly, but first this report from Fintan Monaghan.
These Palestinians were among the hundreds taking refuge in Gaza's only Catholic church when it was bombed by Israeli forces.
The majority were children and elderly people, all peaceful civilians. We pray and pray for peace and peaceful coexistence. Many were killed and injured. My mother suffered serious head injuries. She was in the churchyard with other women. We were taken by surprise by this Israeli airstrike. This is a barbaric and unjustifiable act.
The attack on the Holy Family Church has been widely condemned, even by Israel's biggest ally. Shortly afterwards, Benjamin Netanyahu's office issued a statement saying Israel deeply regrets the stray ammunition that hit the church and promised to investigate. But this isn't the only time Israel has attacked a Palestinian place of worship. Earlier this year, Gaza's Religious Affairs Ministry said Israel's onslaught had damaged or destroyed nearly 1,000 mosques. Even cemeteries have come under attack. Palestinian dead denied their final resting place. In June, a United Nations commission issued a report condemning Israel's destruction of religious sites as a war crime.
The damage to religious and cultural sites deeply affects intangible cultural elements such as religious and cultural practices, memories, and history, undermining the identity of Palestinians as a people.
Nowhere in Gaza is safe from Israeli attacks, and the death toll rises daily. But the cost of war goes beyond human lives. There's growing evidence of an Israeli campaign to erase the spiritual and cultural roots of the Palestinian people. Fintan Monaghan, Al Jazeera, for Inside Story.
Well, let's bring in our panel of guests who are going to discuss this with us right now. And they are Reverend Mitri Raheb of the Dar al-Kalima University. He joins us from Bethlehem in the occupied West Bank. In Brussels, Moataz al-Fegiery, the Vice President of EuroMed Rights, a network of organisations that defends human rights across Europe and the Mediterranean. And Michael Lynk is a Professor Emeritus in the Faculty of Law at Western University. He's also a former UN Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in the occupied Palestinian territory. He joins us from London, Ontario in Canada. Thank you, all three of you, for joining us today on Inside Story. So, Reverend Mitri, if I can start with you. Every single day there is a death toll, sometimes a very large death toll in Gaza. This attack on Thursday, though, 3 people died, and yet it was very rare. It was rare because it received direct condemnation from the White House. Would you not agree?
Correct. Actually, all 3 churches, Christian churches in Gaza, were attacked. The first, St. Porphyrios Church, already on October 23, and then the Baptist Church, there, the small Baptist Church, and now the Holy Family Catholic Church. And so 100% of the Christian churches in Gaza actually were hit. In addition to all church-related organizations, operating in Gaza.
Moataz, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was in touch with the President of the United States and with the Pope. He told both of them he would carry out an investigation, but he also told them the initial reports was this was an accident. Really? Do you think there was an accident here? Because there seems to be a pattern, doesn't there?
Of course, no one can believe that since October 2023, we have seen systematic targeting of civilian sites, including religious sites, Muslims or Christians. So this is not the first attack. It is not an isolated. It is not unintentional. This is how Israel actually spread a culture of fear and deterrence among the civilians. The church was sheltering civilians, and some civilians killed actually in this attack. So what the Israeli army mentions that they will investigate, one cannot really take that seriously, because since the attack on Gaza, there has been no meaningful investigation. On the contrary, Israel and its international allies obstruct international institutions to conduct fair and transparent investigation and put Israeli officials accountable for their actions.
Michael, what does international law tell us about all of this? Are mosques and churches, for example, protected places? Certainly, the Israelis knew the geographical coordinates of all of the places of worship in Gaza, because these are places that have been there decades, if not centuries.
Yes, look, international law is thick with prohibitions, strict prohibitions against attacks on religious and cultural centers, because these are the centers with regards to civilian life in any society. Wind up attacking them, and you're destroying the cultural and religious artifacts of any particular society. And the degree in which religious sites, mosques and churches have been attacked and destroyed in Gaza over the last 21 months lends itself to the growing argument that Israel's purpose in the way in which it's conducting its war is to rid Gaza of all of its Palestinians by making the entire strip unlivable, by destroying the things that are central to their lives, and not only churches and other religious sites, but also schools, universities, shopping centers, and homes. All of this, the destruction of the essence of human life to make life unbearable and unlivable.
Reverend Mitri, would you agree with that? I mean, if you look, it's just not just religious sites, it's places of education, healthcare, cultural sites. Maybe these all have something in common. Maybe it's an effort to try and erase Palestinian identity.
Correct. Actually, it is a deliberate action to erase the Palestinian cultural heritage, Palestinian history. You know, Christianity in Gaza started already in the 4th century. So there is this rich Christian presence in Gaza, which is being extinct as we speak. So Christianity will not survive, actually, this decade in Gaza. But also, Israel destroyed over 2/3 of the educational center. You know, Dar al-Kalima, the university that I founded here in Bethlehem, opened a satellite program and a center in Gaza 6 years ago. Also, that campus was destroyed a year ago, actually during Holy Week, with all the artwork. You know how many artists were murdered in Gaza through Israeli airstrike, but also art pieces. So it's the intangible and tangible heritage of the Palestinians that is being erased. In addition to, as you indicated, even the graves. My colleague, one of the vice president here at our university, actually the grave of his father and mother in the city of Gaza was destroyed. So even the remains, the memories of this family are gone. And this is actually what Israel wants, erasing the memory, the culture, the history of the Palestinian people, Christians as well as Muslims. I mean, imagine if something like this would happen to a Jewish synagogue. The whole world will be actually in arms. But when mosques, over 1,000, when churches, 100% of them, when 5% of the Christian community in Gaza are murdered, we see actually silence, and it's a deafening silence.
Moataz, there's been silence perhaps from some, but not from the Pope, because he has taken to social media, the former Twitter X. He said, sadly, this act adds to the continuous military attacks against the civilian population and places of worship in Gaza. I again call for an immediate halt to the barbarism of the war and for a peaceful resolution of the conflict. Moataz, I mean, the fact that the Pope is now saying, I think, stronger language there, talking about continuous military attacks against the civilian population, the fact that Trump turned against this particular attack when there are attacks every single day, when we see Palestinians who are starving, queuing for food, are killed in large numbers almost every single day. Do you think this attack actually, after 21 months, might make a little bit of difference in terms of the global conversation?
Condemnation was important, and it came from European countries, from United States. But condemnation alone is not enough, because what we are witnessing over the last 22 months is a culture of impunity that actually involve major powers in the world who provide protection, empowerment to Israel and the Israeli army. Words are not enough. We need actions. And actually, if we look at the action coming from Washington, they actually undermine the basics of international institutions. They recently, as you all know, Trump imposed sanctions on the UN Special Rapporteur on Palestine. They also previously imposed sanctions on the International Criminal Court, something really we cannot, I really personally don't believe what's happening, because United States as a country, which actually in late 1970s and post-Cold War helped this international institution to grow, now they try to destroy and paralyze these institutions. So condemnation alone is not enough. Recently, European leaders who gathered here in Brussels on 15th of July, actually they were deliberating taking any measures against Israel that actually included in the association agreement, Euro-Mediterranean Association Agreement, and they refused. They refused to take any measures, including some kind of sanctions or suspending programs, collaboration programs. So political will is needed. Condemnation, because of the size of the attack and because it involved an important religious institution. So we have seen some condemnation, but it is not enough. We need actions, and it is known. Actions are really known if they have the political will to do. ICC, United Nations, expert, ICJ, they do great work and everything is documented. International human rights organizations, they have all data and all facts. But what is the international system is lacking is the political will to really end this conflict and to eradicate the human rights legacy, the catastrophe, the humanitarian catastrophe that has been unfolding every day in the occupied territories.
Michael, you heard Moataz there talk about the sanctions against Francesca Albanese. She was your successor as the special rapporteur dealing with human rights in occupied Palestine. Also, the US sanctions on the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. I mean, is international law got any space to do anything in these circumstances when it seems there is not the political will from the big, powerful countries to force any action?
You put your finger on it. There always is going to be a tension between international law, which is very clear with respect to its analysis of what Israel is doing in the occupied territories, and particularly Gaza, with respect to the denial of Palestinian self-determination, with respect to the war crimes and crimes against humanity, and quite likely genocide in Gaza. The question always comes down to political will. International law, unlike domestic law, doesn't have its own armies. It doesn't have its own police. peace. It depends upon international political will to fulfill this. But when international law, our modern system, was created in the ashes of the Second World War, it was never meant to be an umbrella that folds up at the first sign of rain. It was meant to be a sturdy guardrail to prevent countries, big or small, from committing outrages to humanity. And yet here we see the United States giving political cover at the United Nations to Israel by vetoing resolutions with respect to ceasefires or not honoring them. We see Europe, as was mentioned this past week, deciding not to take any action with respect to the status of its association agreement with Israel. It's only through sanctions, it's only through, if you like, political pain and political cost that Israel is going to change its behavior and hopefully bring itself back within the consensus of the international community on the obedience of international law and UN resolutions. Until we see that universal political will, I'm afraid Israel then has a carte blanche to continue with its disastrous war, and the Palestinians are the ones who are going to continue to suffer.
Reverend Mitri, we saw on Friday a rare visit to Gaza by the leader of the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem and the Greek Orthodox Patriarch of Jerusalem. And I thought the comments from Cardinal Pizzaballa, who is the Latin Patriarch, the cardinal who represents the Pope, was interesting. He said, the Israeli military says it was a mistake. We are not sure about this. And some of those then around him briefed reporters that they thought this might be revenge for what happened in Taiber in the West Bank last week, where there was an attack, including an arson attack on a church. Didn't actually burn the church down. And then there was a meeting of religious leaders, a group of religious leaders and diplomats who strongly condemned Israel. What do you make of that theory?
I'm not sure. Actually, the incitement of Israeli troops and Jewish settlers on Christian sites has been increasing since actually the year 2000. So Taibe was just one episode of a long list of churches that were attacked. Just to mention few, in 2015, the church in Tabga on the Tiberias, Lake of Tiberias, were burned down. The church in Latrun, the monastery of Latrun, in 2022, they had slogans, nasty slogans against Jesus. The Protestant cemetery on Mount Zion, with some of the senior missionary, Protestant missionary, like Bishop Gobat Schneller from Germany, was desecrated in January 23. The Armenian quarter also in 2023 was attacked and now is under settler control. The Church of the Flagellation in East Jerusalem, also the crucifix was destroyed and brought down. So it's one attack after the other. And again, these Jewish settlers, I call them Jewish actually terrorists, they have impunity because nobody actually brings them to court or to justice. And spitting on priests in the city of Jerusalem, this is like becoming a daily thing that clergy are exposed to. So it's not one time thing, but it is a series of attack and incitement. And the incitement
Reverend Mitri, if I could just bring Moataz in on this then. The situation in the West Bank, settler violence, it is getting completely out of control. The UN reported more than 700 incidents in the first half of this year, I understand.
Yes, and this is a natural result of what is happening in the occupied Palestinian territory over the last 2 years. the level of violence and the intimidation against minorities, against Muslims, against Christians is intense inside Israel, in the West Bank and Gaza. In the whole Middle East, with the recent war between Israel and Iran, the whole Middle East right now, I believe that religious toleration is shrinking, and it is unfortunate that we will witness this type of attacks and hatred spreading in the region. This is simply because this conflict continued without any serious effort to have a peaceful and just settlement. The machinery, the media machine, and the propaganda of the Israeli politicians and the media institutions are so intense, not just against religious minorities, but also the genocidal project of Israel, not just against human beings, against civilians, but also the cultural genocide. International law mainly focus on genocide in the meaning of physical destruction of a group of people. But actually, there is no clarity on what is known as cultural genocide. I think what Israel is doing now is also can be classified as cultural genocide, eradicating the cultural essence of the Palestinian community. And inside Israel also, and this is not something not new, since long times there are lots of legislations that discriminating against non-Jews inside Israel. And actually this proves that Israel is not a country to be proud of its religious toleration or its democracy as it pretends internationally.
Michael, what do we do about settler violence if Israel is not going to act and is the only country that can do something, the United States? I note that a 20-year-old dual US Palestinian citizen was beaten to death last week, and the comments from Washington didn't seem to me to be particularly loud.
I hear you with respect to this. Let's look at the statistics. 2023 was the highest number of recorded attacks ever by settlers on Palestinians and their properties. That was exceeded in 2024. And now the figures coming from the United Nations for the first 6 months of 2025 suggest that this is going to be the most violent year yet on the West Bank with respect to settlers and their attacks. Let's keep in mind, the settlements are a war crime under the Rome Statute of 1998, as well as under the Geneva Conventions. They are profoundly illegal under international law. And yet the countries that have the most power to be able to enforce that law, Europe and North America, while almost all of them, except for the United States, agree of the legal status of the settlements, have done virtually nothing with respect to trying to stop their growth. We now have over 360 settlements in East Jerusalem and the West Bank, with over 750,000 Israeli settlers. The Minister for Settlements in the Israeli cabinet, Mr. Shmolich, has promised another 500,000 settlers in the next several years. And I think his boast has a chance of being fulfilled, because even Europe is cautious about wanting to put any kind of sanctions on settler leaders, on imports and exports coming from Israel, from the settlements, goods and services coming into the European market. All of these things are sanctions and actions that North America and Europe can take with respect to the settlements, and yet none of them have raised a finger, even though almost every one of their foreign policy programs states these settlements are illegal under international law.
Reverend Mitri, I mean, in terms of freedom of worship, there have been problems for many years. I remember being in Bethlehem, where you are, in 2002 and covering the siege of the Church of the Nativity. I've stood outside Damascus Gate by the Old City and watched Muslims be unable to go and worship as they would like. Are things getting worse, though?
Definitely. I myself cannot go to Jerusalem to worship or to conduct a service there. I don't have a permit, and this is true almost for over 99% of the people in the West Bank. Even during Holy Week, which is the holiest week for us Christians, only 1,400 people were allowed to enter Jerusalem. Even Jerusalemites themselves, Christians, were not allowed to reach the Holy Sepulchre. And this is really annoying for us, because these are our holy places. We have been connected. The connection between Jerusalem and Bethlehem has been there for the last 2,000 years, and now it is cut. And it's cut by Israel. And unfortunately, we don't see that the Western countries are actually speaking up and doing something about it. It's only lip service. And often we feel as if we were the children of a lesser God, as if there were a hierarchy, that the life of a Jew is the most important, and then the life of a Christian may be somewhere, and then the life of a Muslim even lower. And we don't believe in that. For us, we are all created in the image of God, and we will continue to resist this policy that actually hinders us from praying and worshiping in the places where Jesus lived, taught, and was resurrected.
Moataz, there are members of the current US administration and prominent members who make a great deal of their Christian faith. Do you think it's time for them now to speak up?
Of course, the United States has been always giving attention to religious freedom. The State Department publish every year a report on religious freedom. But actually, what we have been seeing under Trump is less attention, less interest to maintain coherence in the international community, especially with the human rights regime. I hope that this recent attack will be a wake-up call, and the administration will change its approach to not just to religious freedom in the occupied territory, but actually to the root causes, which actually cause all of these attacks and humanitarian crises that we have been witnessing over the last 2 years. So, but I am a skeptic because, as I said previously, condemnation is not adequate. It is not enough. We need actions. And it doesn't seem that the American administration really want to create pressure, meaningful pressure on Israel. And I believe that the United States is the only state in the world that can really intervene and can pressure Israel to change its hostile approach in the occupied territory. Without that, I think this war will continue, these attacks will continue, and the level of extremism and toleration will hostility against the religious community will increase, and this attack will not be the last one.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you to our guests today, Reverend Mitri Raheb, Moataz Al-Fegiery and Michael Lynk. For further comprehensive coverage with plenty of context and analysis, remember to visit our website, aljazeera.com. As ever, we'd like to hear from you. Post your comments and ideas on our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, or use X, the former Twitter. There you need to look for @AJ Inside Story. I'll be back with our next edition very soon. Until then, from me, James Bays, and the team here, stay safe and well. Bye-bye for now.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.